Thank you. Move on to action on the agenda. Do we have a motion? Is there any changes, first of all? If none,
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
get a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Comments from the public? There's no public here, so we'll just keep moving on. 6, action on consent agenda on on the B, regulatory forestry report expenditures. Down on the bottom, there's the second one from the bottom, instead of 6110, should be 3245. Just make a note of that. And if there's no other changes, I'd accept the motion to approve the consent agenda.
Move to approve?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. 7, action items. Discussion on AYB registration. Rex.
Well, this is something I wanted to bring forward just so the park board is aware of it. We had a really good discussion at the Youth Baseball Association meeting last Wednesday night over at the community center. And here's a little bit what's going on, or what prompted this spirited discussion that they had. So we've got Ashwaubenon Youth Baseball. And Ashwaubenon Youth Baseball, it could be many other organizations. I think this is probably the tip of the iceberg, quite honestly, and I'm sure it's happening in I know it's happening in other municipalities as well. So as an example, when a child signs up, they can sign up for league play, which is for everybody, and then there's tournament team. And some organizations have, anyone can be on the tournament team. Some organizations take a certain amount of kids on the tournament team and you got to try out for it. And you go on to play more games, more practices at an advanced level of play. So what the concern was, or what was happening from last year and even starting out this year, was there are a number of private organizations, both for-profit and non-profit, that are out there in the greater Green Bay area, that are gearing themselves towards youth sports development. And as that, they are giving out specialized instruction for a fee, and many of them have their own tournament teams. So you can, for a fee, join this business or organization, play on a tournament team, and many of them, or a number of them, are going out of state and going much farther away to do some of these games. Up in the air on how that's doing or not doing. But so parents are paying a lot of money to do this, to get their child additional work or instruction with the coaches. That's what their fees are going towards to pay for, is a lot of times the instruction. So what's happening, or what the concern was, is if someone has signed up for AYB, and again, I'm just using them as an example because this is the first one it's happened to, or that's actually trying to address it. You sign up for league, for tournament team, and sometimes, depending on what age group you're in, your numbers it's a very slim number. Like, for instance, on a tournament team, they might only be bringing 10, 11, 12 players to a tournament. That's it. That's the numbers that they've got. But now, if a particular tournament weekend conflicts with the private organization that they've joined, and in some cases are paying thousands of dollars to be a member of, which tournament are you going to? Which team are you committed to? The concern is that children are going to the private league because they're paying a lot more money to do that, which then leaves the youth baseball organization, quite honestly, in a bind, especially if there are potentially multiple kids on a particular youth Ashwaubenon team that are going to other tournaments. Now that team, which has already paid their tournament fee, is short of players. There's no other players to fill in And there's potential that they're losing tournament fee registration because of that. In a smaller effect, the same thing could happen in regular league play. Depending upon what the numbers are, you could have, 13 kids on a team, or you could be tight at 10 kids on a team, and if a couple of kids miss, then that league team is playing down numbers, and it's not a real good experience for the other kids on the team, nor for the coaches. So we've got that going into play here, basically. And so what do we do about that? So youth baseball had a discussion topic of potentially not allowing youth who were paying to be on a private team, not allowing them to be part of Ashwaubenon youth baseball. And I can see why they did it, but there's also some different effects that can happen, that can spur, because quite honestly, Ashwaubenon Youth any organization, any of our 7 co-sponsor organizations, the crux of the cornerstone of their co-sponsorshipness is that everyone is welcome to participate. There's no, if you're an Ashwaubenon resident or you're open enrolled, you can play. And so by not allowing them to be part of the organization because they are part of another organization, that starts to raise some philosophical issues, across the board for all organizations, really. Again, it just seems to be the baseball issue that are being touched on. There were a number of parents in attendance at that baseball meeting. They all stated that Ashwaubenon Youth Baseball was going to be their #1 priority. And as such, the vote for that was to continue to allow everyone to be involved in both league and tournament play, with the caveat that those kids that are also on a lot of these private teams, quite honestly, they're going to be watched a little bit closer to see if, they're missing games and or practices because of this private league, those dates and tournaments affecting the same time that the Ashwaubenon games and tournaments are. So it was a good meeting. I think some of this stuff will need to be addressed, in the future. I'm hoping not, but it's a very good chance, not only with baseball, potentially with softball in the future, or other private organizations that are, for any sport that are out there. How is it affecting Ashwaubenon sports? And then does there need to be limitations on what the participation parameters are? One of the points that I brought up was, at least at this point, is it any different? And then a couple other parents brought this up as well. Is missing games or practices because of the private team any different than missing games or practices because a family is going camping that weekend, or maybe the family is going fishing that weekend? Well, they've got another baseball tournament to go to. And again, there's a lot of gray area here of what is okay to do and what is not okay to do when you're signing up, or when a family goes on vacation. And my point was, I think maybe the rules need to be modified somewhat so that, hey, if someone misses games or practices, then coming up, they don't play in the next game, or they get less playing time. Rather than saying an absolute, no, you can't be in our organization, I was kind of trying to go with, or suggested, that some of the internal rules of, hey, if you miss this, then you can't play in the upcoming one. I think that would be a lot more palatable and kind of ease the situation of just telling an Ashwaubenon resident, no, because you joined this, you can't play in our league. So this is happening all across the country. I mean, it's not unique to Ashwaubenon. It's happening from coast to coast. I know I've got many friends in other communities that are dealing with the same thing, and everyone's trying to figure out what's happening. And it's the way of the future. There's just so many private organizations springing up with this additional coaching that it's affecting the core hometown youth leagues, in any sport. That being said, I thought it was enough of a concern due to the meeting we had last week that I need to at least bring it to the park board's attention in case something happens in the future where if there are truly issues, you're not hearing it for the first time. Right now, I think we've got it, Ashwaubenon Youth Baseball, the board voted, I feel at this time, the right way to do it, to let the parents know they've got a concern, and hey, Ashwaubenon Youth Baseball, if we're having games or if you're on a tournament team, Ashwaubenon needs to be number one. Otherwise, it affects the team and the organization as a whole.
Some of the things, though, that I heard, Rex, in this whole situation, because I've been contacted on it too, is the concern for the kid. When they're pitchers, that they're out there and they're only limited to a certain amount of innings a week. While they're pitching on their team for league, they're pitching on the team for tournament team, and they're pitching for their other team possibly, and they're, doubling and tripling up on the amount of innings that they could have.
Yep.
And they're blowing their arms out, just by throwing so much. So, I understand the concern. Some of it's not just the lack of the person there for but it's for the kid's concern too.
And I understand that. And again, there's pros and cons to it, because if a parent wanted to have their, and let's just say for the pitcher, because if you're going down that road, it seems like the most angst had to do with someone who was pitching, not someone who's playing shortstop or second base, but it's someone who was pitching.
Right.
Because they potentially could have damage to their arm by playing that much in that position. So my comment to that, and some people agree with me, some people don't, but in my opinion, to me, that should be borne by the parent, not the organization. It's the parent that needs to monitor that, because that son or their son or their daughter, that's their son or daughter. I don't think, you would go crazy as an AYB coach trying to contact other organizations and how much did this guy pitch, how much did she play, on and on.
Yeah.
So again, just my opinion, to me, that concern, and I expressed it, and like I said, I think some agreed with it and some might not have, but that should be borne by the parent, that responsibility of how much is someone pitching. If they pitched in a weekend game and now on Saturday and Sunday, and all of a sudden they're scheduled to pitch in a league game on Tuesday, well, the parent then needs to talk to the coach, and say, and that's all part of it too, now you've got kids that, they were drafted by an AYB team to be a pitcher, and now they can't pitch because, and there's a lot of moving parts here, and it's going to raise some conundrums, and I don't know what the best answer is. All I can say is
it does have a trickle down effect, because
absolutely,
if he can't pitch, well then little Johnny's got to pitch, and he hasn't pitched at all, and
hasn't been practicing
he
as
hit
a pitcher,
somebody or whatever, and it is so.
And I think a lot of this comes down to the parents and saying,
right.
If I'm signing my kid up for 2 or 3 leagues, and I know that I'm only going to be making 2 or 3 games from this league, then there has to be at least some point where you go as a parent, is the juice really worth the squeeze?
And I think a lot of people are still trying to be involved in Ashwaubenon Youth Baseball, any Ashwaubenon program. I don't want to just focus on baseball. We've historically had great coaches, and we've had a great volunteer system of dads stepping in to help out that have had a good knowledge base. So, we're fortunate on that, Justin. So, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is.
Yeah.
But you need to be aware of it in case something, in case issues continue to bloom, I guess, as time progresses.
Well, at some point too, and I hate the direction this is going, and you could see it for a few years building up, like you said, every sport too. And the parent's always going to do and should do what's right for them and their kids. They should, without a doubt. But there's also the part of commitment and teaching your kids about commitment.
Yep.
You can't commit to everything.
Right.
Right.
That sounds kind of black and white, but that's kind of where I go with some of this stuff is, if you're committed over there, it's okay. You can't be committed over here then. And you know what, that's gonna open up another opportunity for another kid over here at AYB.
Yep. So, as I said, it's just going to be monitored, for the 2018 season, at least with this particular organization, and it'll be evaluated, and we may be back here in the fall asking for the okay to modify rules, or things might have turned out okay.
This has been going on for quite a while in a lot of different organizations. I mean, I can remember back 15 years ago yet, it was, was out there with my kids and everything. So, I mean, it's not new, but it's new that they wanted to limit it to because of it's a co-sponsored group, not accepting residents. And I think that's wrong. I mean, everybody should be welcomed into it.
So there's options out there, and if we need to discuss those in the future, it'll be a good.
It's a competitive
topic.
nature of everybody these days is what I think it amounts up to,
Yep.
especially the parents.
I was just gonna say that.
Anything else on this? Anybody got any more questions, or? Okay. Thank you very much. We'll move on to 7B, discussion and possible action on quote for aerial lift truck.
Bids came in for the aerial lift truck to replace the, I believe, 1999 model that we have currently in our stock, in our rolling fleet. 2 bids came in. Both of them were from Utility Sales and Service, which is located in Appleton, right off Highway 41. One of them was for an international chassis with a Cummins diesel engine. The other one was for the Freightliner. One of them met specs, the other did not. So we are recommending the Freightliner chassis with the Cummins diesel engine, the 9-liter. However, that bid was slightly over budget. $185,000 was budgeted. That bid came in at $189,421, so about $4,400 over. That's still what we're recommending. According to Utility Sales and Service, there was some unexpected price increases with some of the steel and parts that came in. So they apologized for that. But again, we don't want to have an undersized truck. I think that's one of the issues we have with our current truck. So I'm going to let Tim jump in here. I probably stepped on him a little bit here for explanations, but anything that Tim would like to add or any questions, he can certainly answer from the board.
Were there other things that resulted in the International not meeting specs besides the engine size?
No, the aerial part, the chip box and everything, the bids were identical. It was just the difference in the manufacture of the chassis that they put underneath it. For whatever reason, International decided to bid that 6.7 liter engine. That is the engine that they typically put in large diesel pickup trucks, which probably isn't adequate or is not adequate to power a 33,000 GVW commercial type vehicle. There are things that you can have some wiggle room on, but making sure that you have enough power in the vehicle to pull the chipper and then the vehicle itself is really not something that you can go light on.
Were bid requests sent to anybody other than Utility Sales and Service?
Yeah, I did a fair amount of research. There are about four or five large manufacturers within the industry scattered throughout the country that manufacture and produce aerial lifts, and we did send it to all of those. My guess is having a local company right in our backyard. They probably realized that it was a competitive disadvantage. I did put something in the specifications about potential warranty work and service. You know, if we have a company from Oklahoma bid on it and we go with them, obviously there's an issue there with logistics as far as warranty work and delivery things down the road. So none of the other aerial manufacturers ultimately submitted a bid.
There was some discussion with regards to a LED aerial or aero board. Was that something that we should have? I see you didn't have it in there, but there was discussion about the advantage of having it.
Yeah, what we did was I took the village's lead mechanic down to the city of Appleton to look at some of the vehicles that they have, and they do Christmas decorations on College Avenue, similar to what we do on Holmgren and Oneida. And they have this LED aero board on the back of the vehicles, and they use that on those busy streets to make sure they're doing things safely. And then in talking with our operations supervisor in Public Works, he said that he actually loved that idea because that's going to prevent them from having another vehicle on that operation, which is basically a pickup truck with a towable aero board behind it. So he loved that idea because that's one less vehicle and one less person that he has to allocate when they do Christmas decorations, flags, other seasonal things like that.
Now, you looked at taking the 1999 truck and rather than trading that in for $5,000, selling that on your own. Is it possible you could take the money from that and that would cover the overbid price? Where you could.
Yeah, I mean, it's typically not budgeted that way. It's budgeted at the purchase price, and then whatever value we get from that trade-in or resale goes back into the equipment replacement fund.
I think, Dean,
It's basically the same thing that happens.
we talked with our finance director on this a little bit, and we have another equipment purchase coming up, the stump grinder, that is at least that amount of money under budget. And with that pre-information, I guess, the finance director did not have a concern being able to front that additional overage from what was budgeted, because we'll be under budget on the stump grinder, basically. So it'll almost be a wash on that.
So would it be possible to get that LED board or not?
Yeah, the final price that I recommended did include that.
Okay.
That's certainly something that we could take out if the board went that direction. But it's always cheaper to add it in with the initial bid than it is to bring it into the project at a later date.
Yeah,
Okay, well,
aftermarket.
personally, I think that's something that should be included.
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes, when you do these things, you never know where you're going to end up, and there's always other ideas that you can learn from people. We did get an initial budget price from utility sales and service at that 185. I didn't include any extra cushion or unforeseen dollars, but 185 is where they initially thought we should be, and that's what we used during the budget process.
Tim, what is the airline that you are recommending as an option?
Yeah, that was another thing that we didn't initially think about. It's being a larger vehicle with air brakes. Basically, they tap into that airline to that compressor, and they just put a fitting into one of the toolboxes, and then you put a short retractable air hose, and we use it to clean out the chainsaws right out in the field, rather than going back to the garage and doing it that way.
When you say they recommend, is that with the city of Appleton when you
Yeah,
talk to those guys?
yeah. So I talked to some of the guys on the crew, and that was something that they really liked. So I didn't know where it would come in, so that's why I listed it as an option, as well as some of those other things. That way, if it wasn't to our advantage financially, we would just not include them.
Okay, so Tim, the Freightliner for 189,421 does include that stuff with the board, the arrow and all that other kind of stuff?
No. 189,645, Mark.
Okay, where's,
The base bid was 189,421, and then you add in the cost of the airline.
okay. we're
But
down
it
to
does
the bottom.
include the aero board, yes.
Down to the bottom, okay. So the 189, our recommendation to the village board is 189,645.
Yes. And that would include the airline as well as the LED aero board.
Okay,
Yes.
And Tim, I'd have to say that the airline is essential to have. Doing a lot of chainsawing myself and having it done, work on the side, it is nice to have air to blow out and clean out the chainsaw rather than, it saves the life of the chainsaw.
Yeah, it was something I never really thought about, but, there's a compressor on the vehicle already, so all you put a T in there and run some line into a good location, and there you have it.
I'll make a motion to approve the cost of $189,645 for the truck, bucket, the LED arrow, and the airline.
I'll second.
okay, so that's the recommendation to the village board, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Anybody have any questions on that? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
And I do have copies of the entire bid packet that we sent to the vendors. In the interest of paring down the information that you had to process, I didn't include it, but if somebody's interested in those, I could certainly give you a copy of that.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to 7C, discussing possible action on the Canterbury shelter bid. Rex.
This is for the 24-foot octagonal shelter, which is planned for Canterbury Park. Bids went out, they were advertised and sent to a number of vendors, and we received 6 bids back. Four of the vendors were all very close. If you take a look on the bid summary, on the total bid on the right-hand side, the far right column, you can see that there's 4 bids that were probably within $700 of each other. They're all different manufacturers versus like manufacturers just sold by a different vendor. The low bid was Commercial Recreation Specialists. They're out of Verona. The type of product is called Ultrasight. We have not used that type of product before. However, I've been able to find no bad or concerning information regarding the project or the product. That bid was $23,436. If you want to know what the shelter looks like, currently we have very, very similar shelters in Waterford Park as well as Sand Acres. Those are 28-foot shelters. These would just be a little bit smaller at 24-foot shelters. Both of those brand names are Polygon. Polygon came in at $23,787, so a dollar difference of $351 between the two of them. We're familiar with Polygon. We've put them up. I don't know if the Ultrasight will be any different, but Ultrasight was the low bidder at $23,436. So I don't know. I guess my recommendation is one of the two of those, and as long as I'm not finding anything different, I'm tending to lean towards the low bid, even though we're very familiar with Polygon already.
Rex, you said the Polygon was 28 feet in diameter?
The ones over at Waterford and Sand Acres are 28 feet. The one going into Canterbury would be 24 feet.
But the bid of the Polygon, is that 28
The
feet?
bids are all the same for 24-footers.
Having used the one over at Waterford Park, that is a nice diameter for that. And I think if we had that 4 feet shorter than what it is in diameter, that would make it significantly smaller as far as usage of space.
Yeah, you'd probably be able to get 3 good tables in there versus the 5, but I also take a look at Canterbury Park, Dean, and Canterbury Park is very small, and it already has, you know, a huge tennis court on there. There's not a lot of extra space at Canterbury. In addition, the nearest home is probably, you know, what, 20, 30 feet away. I mean, it's very close to the nearest home, so my concern is that that shelter would just be too overwhelming for such a small park, which is why my recommendation was with the 24-footer.
Where are you planning on placing it?
If you know where the spring animals are, immediately south of the spring animals. We'd be taking down one of the ash trees to make room for it.
This is close to the west side of the park.
Yeah, the northwest side.
Yeah, okay.
Rex, did our own crews erect the polygon shelters at Sand Acres and Waterford?
They did.
Yeah.
And I've already contacted one of the lead people on that, recently retired, but he's willing, if we contract with him, he's willing to be the lead on that again, and then we just supplement that with our own crews to help him out.
I'll make a motion to go with the low bid for the shelter.
Commercial recreation for $23,436.08.
Correct.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Community center report.
I think the last time we talked about the community center, I think it was back in the fall, maybe August or September, when we had a little report. And you asked me, whether it be quarterly or every so often, to come back and just talk a little bit about how things are going over there. So I thought it was certainly appropriate. We've gotten a fair amount of evaluations back, which are automatically generated after permit has ended. It's sent to the email address of the renter, and we got a good amount of them back, so you can see some of the comments. Most of them are positive. Some of them are good ideas or concerns, which we address as they come up. Interestingly, we just have some numbers here for you. There were 288 paid permits in 2017, bringing in $46,635 in revenue, and that would be January 1st through December 31st. In addition to the 288 paid permits, we had 309 unpaid permits. Those unpaid permits include our own classes, our own senior events, bookings for community organizations such as the AARP tax stuff, VFW, Ashwaubenon Youth Baseball meetings, Ashwaubenon Youth Soccer meetings, that type of a thing. So another 309 unpaid permits, bringing the total amount of permits to nearly 600. And quite honestly, I'm sure that we've left a few oddball things out that weren't officially even in the books. So some very good usage. Interestingly, there's pretty much equal demand for the rooms, for the smaller Ken Bukowski activity room versus the larger Grant Park room in whatever form or fashion they want it, with or without the wall. There's pretty much equal demand. Literally, you can count on one hand the difference in numbers between the two rooms in terms of permits. So some people like the smaller room for smaller parties, and other people love the bigger room. Some facility improvements we've done in the last couple months. Obviously, we've added some more wall and corner guards, which we are still in the process of doing, which have cut down on some of the wear and tear on the walls. We didn't do all of them at once. We thought, no one's ever going to bump into this section of wall here, and this should be fine. And sure enough, there's the gouges, so Basically, we're just putting corner guards on the, on the corners of the walls and some railings everywhere that potentially could be hit. We just think that's going to make the facility last longer and have more or less repairs that need to be done to the drywall. Some of the ongoing issues that we have had, we're having some bad luck with some of the room shades. The particular company that we're using is very unresponsive to fixing anything, and they pretty much said, we're too busy to fix it, which left us like, well, what do we do then? So we've actually contacted the manufacturer, because I'm sure that company has a license to sell their product, or an agreement. And so we're trying to work through a few things there. For instance, in the activity room, we have 2 shades stuck in the down position, which we cannot fix. We need parts. And if the company that put them in, which was a sole installer for Wisconsin, isn't willing to do it, then, it's very frustrating. They're out of Milwaukee.
Are these warranted items?
They fixed a couple of warranty items, but quite honestly, some of the other things that are happening may or may not be. It's a gray area. We've even said that we'd be willing to pay for the repairs, because we just need them fixed, and that didn't matter. So again, we're working with the manufacturer. We're also working with our general contractor to try and find another business that would be willing to come in and do some of the repairs. A lot of it has to do with the chains and the spindles that are up above inside, and how they're lasting, and the use that they're going through. So it's an ongoing situation here we're working on. Some of the locks, we're still working on a couple of the lighting fixtures, which I think will come to a resolution this week, hopefully, in terms of changing out a few lighting fixtures that weren't too standard. And there's still an issue with the family changing room lighting, which hasn't worked right from day one. The light is always on in there. Granted, it's a LED light, and it's not causing any issues, but it's always on. And so we always get people coming in saying, we can't turn the light off in the family changing room. It's like, well, it's either on or off. And so we need to leave it on. So it's supposed to be on a particular sensor, and something's not set up right in the up above the ceiling tiles to allow that to happen. So we're working on that. Some fundraising dollars were available this year. We were able to purchase a steam cleaner, which we are using for cleaning banquet chairs, as well as the major kitchen appliances. We're hoping there's a few dollars still left in 2018, and we've requested some additional light switches in the storage room, as well as an additional lectern. We've had multiple organizations in there at the same time, and we only have one lectern. And they've all wanted to use it, so it's not something that can be moved back and forth if things are happening at the same time. So we need a second one. So we're hoping to be able to purchase it with the fundraising dollars. That being said, does the park board have any questions, or have you heard any comments regarding the community center and the operation, I guess?
Everybody that I've talked to that's been there likes it, so just thinks it's beautiful.
I would say the one thing that I did notice, just looking through all the surveys, the one thing that does come back is, if there's anything, is the quite a few have rated the community center cleanliness as a 4 instead of a 5. But yeah, other than that,
Never ending.
yeah.
It's yeah. Yep. Especially with some of the permits. And usually what happens is it's not from the normal daily use, it's from some of the larger groups and parties that typically end later in the evening.
Rex, what is the status on the need for additional video surveillance? We had that discussion earlier.
That was taken out of the budget. It was not, budgetary numbers weren't allotted. That was something that was thought to be a good idea, but I don't know if it's really needed. And that's what a lot of the discussion was about as we kind of vetted that. with the administrative staff, is do we really need it, or is it just something we want to keep in the back of our minds, and we decided that it might be best just to kind of put that on the back burner for the time being. I believe it was another, what was that?
$5,000 or something.
Another, 6,000-7,000,
Yeah.
somewhere around in there. So it's not dead, but it's not something that we feel is required at this time.
From the overall evaluation of the community center, I'd like to commend the staff on doing a good job on providing a good experience for the residents of Ashwaubenon and, of course, the outside community as well.
Thanks.
Wonderful. Anything else on this? Okay, we'll move on to review of Parks, Recreation, and Forestry January department reports.
Just a couple oddball things. The furnace blower motor at Pioneer Park Shelter went out, so that was replaced. Mark, I guess I can bring up, we've had a number of concerns regarding some turkeys
Yeah.
in the village. A lot of people are seeing an influx of groups, herds of turkeys. And there's been some concern because turkeys sometimes can ignore you and sometimes they can be a little mean. So what's happening is the deer management committee is going to try and tackle some turkey issues, I guess. And quite honestly, I mean, turkeys are a protected bird, so you can't just go out and shoot them whenever you want. But I think with Act 71, I believe, it is none deer specific. In other words, is if you get a turkey tag during the 2 hunting seasons.
As long as you get it in the area that you're.
Yeah, as long as you get that tag, I believe, just like with the deer, you can use a crossbow or bow and arrow and try your luck at turkeys. And I don't know if people know that, but we're going to confirm that, and then we're going to bring it forth to the Deer Management Committee to make sure that they're comfortable, recommending that as an option to the village board. And
Right.
potentially, some ordinances might need to be tweaked to allow for, I think the ordinances specifically to Ashwaubenon states deer, and that might need to also add in turkeys, so it's being worked through.
We're setting another meeting up, but it'll be soon. We'll keep you posted.
Actually, what's going on in our office right now, what all staff are real busy on is believe it or not, the spring-summer brochure. The first draft has already been submitted, and I think it's already come back to David. So we are planning, we have about 6 weeks to plan out our whole spring and summer schedule. Every class, time, event, nuance of everything is being planned out right now. So we can put it in print and get it out by mid-March to the residents. So that's kind of what everyone's working on right now. I've been working on the summer concert series, going to be starting to contact, or have already started to contact sponsors and getting band prices, and so there's just a lot of work going on with that right now. The other big thing going on in our office is just with all the different projects that are going on with the 2018 approved budget, just getting bid specs ready and trying to get those projects lined up and bid out and ready to go for when the snow starts to melt. Aquatics, we've had some really good numbers there. Our last 3 or 4 open swims on the weekend have brought in over 100 people each time. And that's wonderful. We were actually going to contract some of the open swim times. We're starting to wonder if that was a good idea. We're still trying to work through it, but we've been getting over 100 people for our open swims on Saturday and Sunday each day. That's a lot of people. I mean, so we're actually adding on another lifeguard so we can rotate them around. So we've never had those kind of numbers with the old pool. The old pool, you'd maybe get 20 or 30 people if you were lucky on a good day. But we're 3 times that now.
That includes both the warm water and the other.
Yep, when there's open swim, it's both pools. And what we're finding is most of the parents that are coming with a lot of younger kids are going to the warm water pool. And the tweeners, the elementary kids and middle school kids that are showing up, they kind of hop back and forth. They like to go about 50 times off the diving board and then hang out in the warm water pool, get warmed up, and then go back into the other pool, so.
Have you ever been in it?
What's that?
Have you been in the pool?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I didn't know. Has anybody else? Have you? Okay.
Have you?
No. No, I haven't. No, I haven't.
Missing out.
Rex, where would we find a schedule for the pool's openings?
For the open swim times, if you go on, we have schedules in our office, hard copies that anyone can always pick up. But if you go on on the village website, go to the Park and Recreation page, click on aquatics, there'll be a link to a calendar that'll show the whole month and what times it's open for open swim.
Okay.
In forestry, just the Sellner Tree and Shrub completed the 2017 tree pruning contract last month. And then Tim has probably about 60 or 70 trees that have been identified. A lot of them due to root girdling and other canker-type issues, which will need to be removed. And I know Public Works, depending upon what the workload is with the snow removal, should be starting on those fairly soon. Any
Okay.
questions on anything in the department report, or anything that's not in there?
Rex, back in August, the Boy Scout had submitted a proposal for doing some work in Ashwaubenon Park. Has that been started, or?
The last project, which was completed literally before the snow started to fly, was additional benches and a firewood
Right.
container. That's been completed and installed, and they look very good.
Okay. Anybody have anything else for next agenda?
If we could put an update on the, on drafting co-sponsorship guidelines for non-compliance, interim management by the Park and Rec Department, and dissolution. That'd be termination of a co-sponsor.
One more time, Dean?
Let's see.
Update on drafting co-sponsor
Drafting
guidelines.
for non-compliance, interim management by the Park and Rec Department, and dissolution.
Okay. Anybody else have anything? Need a motion to adjourn?
Move to
Second.
adjourn?
Need a motion in a second? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Phone's going nuts here.